Okay, actually, Gary Lee Conner, thank you so much for joining.
Howdy.
How you doing?
Oh, pretty good. Just
Good.
what is it? Thursday
I
afternoon
think
in
so.
the middle of Texas,
Right.
where I'm at right now, San Angelo.
Well, I love your background there. Like you've got a weird psychedelic thing going on.
Yeah, it's like all my. Well, I actually have a few original posters. I have like some of them on top there are ones that I bought in the '80s in Haight-Ashbury. Like I have, and most of them are just copied off. Like I got them off the internet, just copied them and put them on the wall. And
I love it.
a few of them I have my old book. I got this like, man, what year did I get that? Mid '70s. It was like a book of psychedelic posters. And I cut them all out and put them on the wall.
I love
This
it.
was like when I was in high school, and yeah, I still have some of those even too.
That's
So
incredible.
yeah,
It's incredible.
I love psychedelic
You've been in
stuff.
Texas for like I'm sorry, 20 years now, right?
Yeah, yeah, three, no, 20. Yeah, is
Yeah.
it 3 or 20? Right. Yeah, yeah, 20. Yeah, it's about 20 years. Yeah, right after the band ended. Well, see, I had moved to New York for a while
hmm
because I met my wife like we were on tour in New York, and we went out for years. And finally got married in about 1993. And so between, the last half of the 90s, I was commuting between New York and Seattle all the time.
Right.
So that was kind of hard, but I did it. So,
I did the same thing in the late 90s.
yeah.
So I'm totally with
Yeah.
you.
I had lots of air miles probably at the time,
Yeah.
but
You know,
not anymore.
the best deal there was Continental, even though they were a shitty airline.
Yeah.
They had the frequent flyer thing, right? So
Yeah.
I think my average trip was like $200, like to
Yeah.
Seattle,
Right.
and you could always up like every like third or fourth flight, whatever, you could upgrade to first class. So it was like, okay, perfect,
Yeah.
without paying anything. So they didn't care. But you had to fly out of New Jersey, Newark to do that.
Oh yeah,
So
yeah. I usually, that was easy for me because my wife was. We lived in she lived in Rockland County,
oh, okay,
so the Newark was way easier because you didn't have to go into the city.
right,
I always flew into Newark a lot. Newark was like the main airport I flew into all the time, so I must have
yeah,
flew on Continental quite a bit.
yeah. They had the tiny little seats though. Like I mean, they sucked.
Yeah,
And I'm a relatively tall guy. I think you are as well,
yeah,
right? And
yeah.
it's
Well, yeah,
really hard.
big too. So yeah, I can't imagine like nowadays. Like the seats must be so small I couldn't even fit. I mean, I've lost a lot of weight, but the last couple several years, but I'm still pretty big. So I can't imagine what kind of size seats they have now. And so I haven't been on a plane for like 20 years at least. So
Oh, really? Not at
it
all?
must be like no. I have our one for years. I didn't even leave this town. Like
hmm
hardly ever leave it anyway. It's very, very isolated. It's kind of funny because it's a lot like Ellensburg, except for it's bigger.
Right.
It's about 100,000 people, where Ellensburg was about 20,000, and it's right in the middle of the state, except for the fact that Ellensburg had a freeway going through it. But San Angelo is really weird. It's got no freeway. You have to drive on two-lane roads. It's like if you look at a map, you got like the Interstate 20 is in the north, and it's Abilene, and down south is Interstate 10, which goes from like San Antonio to El Paso,
hmm
and right in the middle is San Angelo, and there's no interstate. It's like one of the biggest towns in the whole country with no interstate. It's like
That's so funny.
so it's like really fun, and it's too far to Dallas. It's like 4 hours, so it
Oh
kind of
man.
sucks to have to go there. But my daughter lives there, so
Uh,
at least before the pandemic, I'll probably go there after
right.
more.
And
So
I think this is a lot of fun because last weekend I did a chat with Brad Sensel from TKO, who was from Yakima.
yeah.
So it was like, yeah,
Oh yeah,
Yakima,
that's right.
Ellensburg, and
Uh-huh.
it's like the center of Washington. Um,
Yeah.
and
Oh
yet
yeah.
here you are, basically in the center of Texas. So
Yeah, I know. It's kind of weird because, well, I migrated all over the country my whole life. Like until I was 6 years old, I lived in Barstow, California, and I was born out in the middle in Fort Irwin. And my dad was a tank commander in
hmm
the early 60s in the Army. And then when I was about six, we moved up to Ellensburg because
hmm
my grandparents both lived in Walla Walla, which is down the corner of the
I
state.
love Walla
Ellensburg's in
Walla.
the middle. Yeah, Walla Walla's a weird town. It's like it's pushed way out in the middle of nowhere
Yeah,
on the
it is.
side. You
It
can't
is.
go anywhere. But anyway, the and then later after I moved to Seattle for not I didn't only live in Seattle maybe like 2 years, 3 years total on and off,
hmm
and then to New York, and then way over here to Texas, which I've been since like 2001. So,
I love it. I love it. So Before we get into the meaty stuff, your wife is an educator, right? She's a teacher.
She's got a PhD in chemistry. When I first met
Oh,
her
wow.
outside the Pyramid Club in New York in 1989, it was like, yeah, she's like, yeah, I mean, it was before the show, and she was there with a friend, and I started talking, because she recognized us because she was going to the show,
Hmm.
and talking about Ellensburg, and she's like, yeah, like teach chemistry. And she just got her PhD like in 1980, 88, 89. So now she's had it like 30 some years, and she knows.
Wow.
Um, but yeah, so I was really impressed by that. That's how I remembered her. Then a few months later, I met her again, and we ended up going out. And then it was really weird going out. We were on tour and then having to fly around and like go, wasn't easy. Of course, nowadays with all this video like stuff and
Right.
internet dating and all that stuff, must really be weird.
Oh, yeah.
It
Yeah,
was,
yeah, yeah.
yeah.
I can say this. I met my second wife on an internet thing, and
Oh
I
yeah.
that was a big fucking mistake. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah.
Um, there's something to be said about just getting to know somebody randomly, and
Yeah.
those
Well, it was kind of actually a good thing because we talked on the phone
right.
so much that we got to know each other better, really, because we talk all the time,
Yeah,
as
no,
opposed to just
absolutely.
going out and doing stuff.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Um,
Yeah.
so you moved to Ellensburg, and you were early teens, I'm gonna guess.
No, when we moved to Ellensburg, I was 6. So
Oh, okay.
like grade school, yeah, like Van was like 1 or 2. We're about
Right.
4.5 years apart. So Van was like 1 or 2, and I was about 6, and then we lived there our whole lives until the band, the band got started there. We did everything with all the SST stuff. We still lived in Ellensburg, and finally, about a year or two before we got signed to Epic, people gradually started going to, like, first Lanigan moved to Ellensburg, and then Pickerel moved to Ellensburg. I mean, we moved to Seattle, from Ellensburg to Seattle, and then Pickerel moved there, and then finally Van and me didn't move there until the first time. I kind of was back and forth when we did the Uncle Anesthesia record. We finally got signed to Epic. That was the first time
Oh,
we got an apartment.
oh my God, your
Yeah.
your puppy is so adorable.
Oh yeah, Rubble. Rubble
Oh,
is a nice golden retriever.
I
Hi
love
Rubble, what's she
Goldens.
doing?
Yeah,
Yeah,
they're
he's
a lot
really
of
great.
fun. They are a lot of
So
fun.
yeah,
So
he is.
you, oh, he's like, I want to be part of it. Come on.
Yeah, I know. He
Does
always
somebody have a
comes over to
treat?
be
A
pet.
treat? A treat?
True. I don't got one here though.
Sorry to
So
put you on the spot on that one.
that's okay.
Um,
Yeah,
so
Ellensburg and Seattle was like, I didn't even go to Seattle. The first time I was like in 5th grade, I remember, the Space Needle was like, we went in 5th grade, we went to Seattle at a school trip and went up in the Space Needle. And, and it was definitely a different place back then. And
oh
even when
yeah,
we started, it was just starting to be like the modern Seattle, probably about the time, early 90s when Microsoft was getting big.
right.
And stuff, in the old days it was logging, bowing, just a real kind of like out of the way, rainy, dark place.
Yeah, no, it's changed so much. Um,
Yeah, and even, yeah, I can't even believe seeing like the videos and pictures of like all the old buildings are now those like 3, 4, 5 story condos. It's like
yeah,
everywhere.
it's
It's like
depressing.
everything, they just tore them down and replaced them.
Depressing. I mean, probably one of the most depressing things is looking at some of the old bars and venues that used to exist.
Yeah, yeah, I think the
They're all
Vogue
gone.
is a condo type place. I think is
It
now
it
first
is
time.
now, yeah.
Yeah,
It went through a few iterations, and I think there's a
yeah,
nail salon on the bottom now, and then like condos above, which is like, who? I'm
yeah.
sorry,
Oh
who
God,
the
yeah.
fuck would live on top of the Vogue? But you know,
I know.
yet here we are. Um, yeah, I mean they're all gone. They're all, even the crocodile now is gone. Like I mean it's all gone.
Yeah. I mean, places, it doesn't surprise me because, like, like places aren't, especially like venues, aren't necessarily the kind of things that last forever. Although there have been way more than you would think. Like CBGB's lasted a heck of a long time.
Yeah,
It
it
was
did.
like 70s to like early 2000s. But,
Yeah,
there's so many problems in having a music venue where, for booking the bands, paying the bands, trying to pay the rent, it's like hard to believe that any of them lasted very long. So.
did the trees ever play CBGBs?
Oh yeah, several times. I used to go
Did
there
you?
quite a bit in New York too. Yeah, Yeah, we played there three times, I think, something like that.
Hmm.
Yeah, there's a picture of everyone out in front, except for me. I don't know why I'm not in the picture. There's a picture of Mark, Van, and Barrett. I was probably
Hmm.
out doing something with my wife or something.
Or,
Because
or you were the one taking the picture.
I don't think, yeah, somebody thought that, but then I don't think I was actually, because somebody else said they took the picture. That's what it was.
Hmm. Interesting. Interesting. Okay,
Yeah,
so we kind of jumped way, way, way ahead because I obviously want to talk about the history a little
that's
bit,
okay.
right?
Yeah,
So,
cool.
like I said, this is more of a chat than an interview, but I always write down, a few things here and there.
Hmm.
So, um, one of the one of the things that I did is I went back and listened to the catalogs and whatnot because, old. So,
Yeah,
I forget shit. So,
yeah, right.
I went back and listened to, the entire catalog, starting with
Mhm.
Clairvoyance and, going forward. Um, and as I was listening to Clairvoyance, I was thinking, okay, this is good. It's like ringing a bell, ringing a bell, ringing a bell.
Mhm.
And then I had, is it She's Lonely? I'm sorry, I should have written that down.
Lonely
Lonely
girl,
Girl, that's
lonely
it.
girl.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah, yeah. And that whole all alone in a room, Seattle, staring at the wall, right?
yeah,
And
right.
that just like it set something off with me. And I was like, oh my god. I remember like and I think now, like thinking back, that was probably the first song that I heard, even
Yeah,
though I probably
right.
heard it in like '88, like a couple of years after the release, right?
Yeah,
So,
right.
um, because I didn't move out here until I was, let's see, I moved out here in '85, I think, but didn't really get into the music scene here until like '87 ish, give or take.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
There was a music scene. See, we didn't even know anything was going on over there in Seattle. It's like when clairvoyant. I mean, you might think like, well, this was recorded, and it was '86, I guess, when we recorded clairvoyance. But as far as having any connection to Seattle or Seattle scene, probably I'd say exactly zero, maybe. I mean,
right.
every once in a while we go to big concerts over in Seattle. About the time we started the band, 85 or 86, we started going over to Seattle, maybe going to some record stores and stuff. But
Hmm.
I don't think we ever went to any like smaller shows at bars or anything before that. After that, of course, we did.
Yeah.
But you know, um, our only connection to anything was really Steve Fisk, who we met in Ellensburg. He was,
Oh, I love him.
you know, yeah, he's like went to Evergreen, was in Pell Mell, and I originally, I guess, from California, but he went to Evergreen in Olympia, like a lot of people did, like Bruce Pavitt and
Hmm.
Sub Pop people. And for some reason, I don't really know why he moved over to Ellensburg, but the friend of his, Sam Albright, had like his, I don't know where they got the money to do it, but they started a studio above his dad's. They made easy mats, like photo mats, the part you put around
Oh yeah.
that side of the photo. Yeah, they had this place called Easy Map, and it was down by the train station in Ellensburg. It's like two-story building. And above the second story, he built this amazingly great, it was like beautiful studio. It was weird though, because he only had an 8-track in there, which I guess maybe wasn't so weird back then. Now it seems
Right.
like that's all, and that's everything we did until Buzz Factory
Well,
was recorded on that Otari 8-track.
no. I mean, in the mid '80s, an 8-track was, I
Yeah,
mean, 16 tracks existed, and 24 tracks were the huge boards,
right.
that you'd get in a
I know.
studio.
Well,
They
it's
cost us
funny
like a
because
million bucks.
I've seen pictures like of the board and like Steve Fisk at the board. It's like that's what we recorded all that stuff on that little tiny thing. It's like really, he's like they're like and but yeah, it was So we met Steve kind of weird. It was like he was like a huge celebrity to us. Suddenly, what's this guy
Hmm.
doing at Ellsberg? Because he had that eraser head looking haircut like in the '80s.
Right.
And there weren't too many like punk rock new wave type people around except for us really. So we're like, who is this guy? We don't know who he is. And he's like
Hmm.
walking around. Then we found out that he was Steve Fisk, and he had a single, Ace Records, the record store. And so that was like, wow, this guy's like a rock star.
Hmm.
He's like got a single. So, and then we found out that he was the engineer at the studio that Sam Albright had built.
Hmm.
And then one day there was an article in, we started the band. We weren't really very serious. We were just doing covers. But I've been writing some songs um, on my 4-tracks. I just got a 4-track. I was really into poetry for years, but I never really could
Hmm.
translate it to songs. And then I was about 22, 23 years old. I got a 4-track cassette
Hmm.
and started writing songs. This was a little before we started the band. And then after we've been playing for a little while, Flanagan was like, "Hey, you got these songs?" I played some songs for him. He's like, "We should actually do these
Nice.
original songs with the band." I was like, "Really? That's a weird idea." We didn't really understand how bands worked, and there was no music scene in Ellensburg, so it was just all doing this in our bedrooms or
Hmm.
whatever. And so I read an article in Spin Magazine by Giza X. It was like
Hmm.
DIY, do your own record. Don't wait around. It's like, how do you get to do a record deal? Like, don't wait around like a major label or something. Just go record it and put it out like on cassette. At this time, that cassettes were a big thing. It was like cassette revolution with K
Right.
cassettes. And a lot of bands were just putting out this stuff on cassette, because before CDs and CD ROMs and writable CDs.
Hmm.
So that was the thing to do. So we went down to the studio and booked like 3 days, and we recorded. The first thing we ever recorded was Other Worlds, which was a little bit, that was like fall of 1985.
Hmm.
And just did it as a demo, but Steve and Sam at the studio, they liked it, and they were doing a small record label. They'd like done 1 or 2 records by somebody called the Twang Babies. They were kind of country comedy. It wasn't
Country
another guy.
comedy. Perfect.
Yeah, yeah, that was weird. Another guy, P.S. O'Neill. He was a little bit more like music, pop maybe. I don't really know this. I
Hmm.
don't think I ever heard his stuff, but so they were like, "Yeah, let's do a record with you guys," and we were like, "Okay, we're a whole record. We don't know, We just had a few songs, and so we started writing songs. Early on, we started writing songs together because we didn't know what else to do. But I was like,
Hmm.
the main guy was writing songs, but we also got together and wrote a lot of songs on that record.
That's awesome. So
And
obviously you knew your brother.
yeah, right.
Where'd you where'd you
Yeah,
meet the other guys? And like, how did that kind of come
yeah,
together?
yeah. That was interesting because it was mostly high school. I was a little older and I was out of high school. And Mark and Van and Mark Flanagan were in high school.
Hmm.
Mark Pickerel was a lot younger, and Van was a year older than Mark Pickerel, and then Flanagan was like in the middle. He was like, he's 2 years younger than me and 2 years older than me. So
Hmm.
yeah, he was like a senior in high school and like this hellion partier guy who was like, I remember he got in some huge wreck and almost got killed. Like, I remember hearing that about that when he was drunk or something. Probably he was like in trouble for like dealing drugs and stealing stuff. He was like a typical like small town bad guy. You
Right.
don't want everything to do with. But Van and Mark Pickerel, we'd had me and Mark Pickerel and Van had a band just doing covers and stuff. For a while we played a couple of dances and
Hmm.
stuff like that because that's all we knew to do.
Right.
If we wanted to have a band, we were like, okay, we'll play dances, right? So Mark and Van and Mark Lanigan all kind of hooked up gradually over. They were a couple classes together, and they like see each other like at high school parties
Hmm.
and stuff like that. And one day they're like, hey, we want to kick Lee out of the band, me, Harry
Oh.
Lee, out
Oh
of the
no.
because I don't know. I guess I was too controlling or something. I don't know. But this was in the summer '85, and why don't you come over and you sing? And Van was going to play. Van started playing guitar, and Mark Picker played drums. And I guess they didn't have a bass player because I ended up being the bass player first. And they had to practice. The only place I had to practice was my room, where I had like a drum kit, and like that's where the other band had been playing. There was 2 different band names. I guess Mark Pickerel wasn't in the one called the Explosive Generation. That was the second one we had. The first one was him and those guys. And we had another guy played bass named Dan Harper, who was a friend of ours.
Hmm.
And then another guy played drums for a while named Dave Frazzini. He played drums in place of Mark Pickerel because I guess I can't remember why Mark Pickerel quit for a while. But then Mark Pickerel, Van, and Mark Lanning was like, let's start this band. Okay. They came and played in our room, and then but in my room, but my mom actually had to tell him, man, let Lee be in the band.
Oh my
So
God, that's hysterical.
yeah, right. I know.
So
It's like one of
so
those great
so
stories.
wait, wait,
So they actually did.
your mom is responsible for you eventually
Yeah.
being back in the screaming trees.
Yeah, pretty
I
much. And
love
then
that.
yeah, and we were just doing like covers still. Like we did some Hendrix covers. We did Black Flag covers. We didn't know the different. We were like that's the kind of the thing was the music is it wasn't like we like punk rock or we like new wave or we like old 60s stuff or 70s. So we like everything, you know.
Right.
And so that's what we play with the old band. So we started doing that stuff. But then, like I said earlier, Mark started listening to some of the songs I've been doing, which was most of the ones that we end up on Other Worlds. And I sat there with him like after we didn't even play him with the band at first. We just did a demo for the studio, like with me telling Mark, you sing the song. Like I sat there with him sitting in front of me, like singing, telling him like what to sing. Then we wrote like, I think we wrote one song together. It was Pictures in My Mind from Other Worlds. It was like
Mm-hmm.
me and Lanigan wrote that together. But so that's what led to Clairvoyance, was that whole kind of summer and fall of having the cover bands, deciding to do the original songs, and then get hooked up with Steve Fisk at the studio.
That's incredible. And you said something that reminded me of one of my questions that I wrote down, which is,
Yeah,
clairvoyance and listening to it and thinking it sounds like the Doors on Speed, right? So it's sort of there's definitely a
yeah,
psychedelic influence.
yeah. We were way in. I mean, Mark was way into the Doors in the early days, and then suddenly, when we started getting a few reviews, well, I don't know if it was on the Clairvoyance record or if it was on the next record, but he kind of like, no, I don't want to have anything to do with Jim
Right.
Morrison. I don't want to
No.
sound like him. But yeah, there was definitely. I mean, you listen to like Strange Out Here on, it's almost like a parody of the Doors, like,
Right.
but it's
Agreed.
about it's about Ellensburg, you know, that part in the middle with that stuff's all like, that's like the studios on Third Street, and I don't know if they actually had cow blood, but there's like slaughterhouses, and that's like besides the college, cows and the rodeo are the only big things
Right.
in Ellensburg. Like it's
Right.
a college town with a rodeo and cows.
Yeah. So I wrote down two other things about that album. Um, One is the organ on You Can Tell, or You Tell Me All, I'm sorry,
Yeah,
um, which was pretty fucking aggressive in 1986, mind you, because,
yeah,
organs were not exactly in fashion. And I think there's organ on a couple of other songs, if I remember correctly.
yeah, yeah. There are. Steve Fisk played. Did he play? I can't remember if he played on.
I
If it
honestly
sounds like
don't know.
totally messy and like you can't tell. I mean, yeah, I could not play keyboards at all. I got to like punch in every 2 seconds. You know, I
Right?
play one handed. Steve Fisk, on the other hand, was a very accomplished, really, really good keyboard player.
Yeah.
Yeah, if the Turning, that song, which was originally recorded, that was the one song that was recorded for Other Worlds that we ended up using. He played
Oh,
keyboards on that organ. We used his organ. He had a really nice Yamaha, old like late 60s electric organ, really beautiful organ.
he's a phenomenal human, just a really, really,
Yeah,
really
he's a
nice
great,
guy.
great guy. Yeah, I still keep in touch with him on Facebook and
Yeah, I
stuff.
mean, it's
So it's
like
kind of nice to.
I don't understand why he doesn't have, like platinum albums up on his wall, like he should. Um, but I think he's one of
Yeah,
those guys that like he eschews fame, right? Like like, nope, I don't
yeah,
want anything to do
yeah.
with that. I
He
just want to
never
do what I
wanted to be.
do and just leave me alone,
Yeah,
you
I
know?
agree with that for sure.
Um, and which is funny because now the next thing I want to kind of the next question that I have down here, related to clairvoyance is,
Hmm.
even though it doesn't sound the same and obviously, different genres and whatnot,
Hmm. Yeah.
it reminds me of Room 9, right? So
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, that makes sense because I mean, Ron was into a lot of the same kind of psychedelic stuff that
yeah,
I was
exactly.
into. I think you
Now,
know.
you guys went a slightly different direction. Like he went more in, and actually, I had Ron on a couple of weeks ago. He's an old friend and a
Yeah,
fantastic fucking human. But
yeah, yeah. I love. We were good
um,
friends for a while in the
yeah,
'90s.
yeah. I mean, well, in the '90s, everything kind of went sideways, which we will talk about in
Yeah.
just a minute. But
Right. Okay.
um, anyway, so I said, hey Ron, I got a copy of the Room 9 stuff, and I think I was like 15 or whatever, 16,
Yeah.
whenever it was. Um, and I think a friend of mine had gotten from somebody in the band, like it was like a third or fourth generation, copy. And
Yeah.
I was playing it for somebody, and they're like, "Oh, it sounds like Duran Duran." And
Yeah.
I was like, Ron, I'm saying this, I love you, brother. I'm saying this,
Right.
in the nicest way, but and he was like, I think that's awesome, right? Like, I
Yeah.
mean, he's just like straight. It was like,
Yeah.
that's
Well, they
great.
yeah they definitely had more of a like the kind of like new wave-ish '80s kind of style thing going than we did. I guess we might have if things had turned out differently, we might have gone that direction a little more. But really, what happened, and the reason probably solidified ourselves as being so. Even though I'd always loved psychedelic music, right when the band first started is when I discovered the Pebbles collection, like the
Mm.
old '60s
Oh yeah.
garage rock stuff, and also the English Rubble collection, which is like the same type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Except it's English, it's all English free beat bands from the mid '60s. It's a little more psychedelic because the English bands were a little more, like
Right.
whimsically psychedelic as opposed to like hard ass fuzz like a lot of Pebbles stuff was. But I just got into that, and that was like my idea of the band would have been like, the Cynics or stuff like that,
I love
like
it.
the Morlocks or that's what I wanted to be like. But nobody else, like if you look at the pictures of the first year, I had like the bowl haircut.
Right.
But the thing is though, if you look at the pictures on Other Worlds, we have like the new wave haircut still. I still had like the tail, the kind of
Oh,
like,
that's true.
poofed in
Yeah.
front. Yeah. And so, yeah, we were definitely, yeah, I remember the first Dinosaur Junior record, which was Dinosaur.
Right.
Jay like looks pretty new wave on that picture.
Yeah. No
So,
shit. So,
yeah, I was right on the cusp of changing from new wave to
yeah. No,
rock.
no, of course, Gary. All I can see right now is you with a bowl haircut and those sideburns.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
just imagine how that would look,
Sideburns.
right? The sideburns
Yeah. I
and the
could,
bowl. Yeah,
yeah.
that'd
Yeah.
be quite
Right.
the
That would,
look, man. It's
I don't
funny,
know.
it's like I've rapidly lost my hair. Like you're super lucky.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. I
Um,
know.
I've
Sorry.
had the same widow's peak since I was like 17.
I
But it gets
know.
slightly worse, over the
It's
years.
weird because Vans, like, I always thought it was like Red in Your Family. Vans, like, balding. And, like, I don't know. I've just been lucky or something. It's runs in, run in the family, except finding out Van losing his hair too.
Oh,
I don't know. It's kind of weird.
I think what you have to do when you get to that point is just
Yeah.
gracefully lose it.
Yeah. I mean,
I
that's
say
all. Yeah.
as I dye my hair bright red, but um,
Yeah.
whatever. I do believe like I'm not going to get hair transplants and I'm not going to wear a wig or anything like that. Like it is what it is, and you know,
One of the coolest, the Lazy Cowgirls, the singer Lazy Cowgirls, he was totally bald way back in the '80s.
yeah, great
But
band.
man, he was like, I remember he looked cool and was cool. Like we saw them in um, Arizona. We were playing the next night at this place in Phoenix,
Hmm.
and we went down to the same place when they were playing that night, and there was nobody there but us. And like they basically played a show for us,
That's awesome.
and they were like totally kick ass. Man, it was really awesome. That was really cool.
They were an
But I
incredible
remember the
band.
guy, he didn't care that he was completely bald. He
Hmm.
was, just
I mean,
rocking that
fuck it.
anyway.
It's like you are what you are, and to me,
Yeah.
it's more embarrassing when you try to not be what you are, right? So,
That being said, I do dye my hair, but other
oh
than that,
well,
that's the only.
obviously I do too, but
Yeah. Well,
um,
I started dyeing my hair way back when I was like 40-ish. The thing is now I'm like, well, if I stop dyeing my hair, it'd end up being, I mean, it's kind of gray up in the back. So I dye it like maybe every like 3 months. I started using
right,
henna dye because the other dye, I was using it so often. I was like, man, this is like fucking my hair really
oh
bad. I
yeah,
was like, maybe I'm going to go bald like
right.
2 or 3 years ago.
It makes it fall out faster, when
Yeah, it does. So I started using henna and just doing it every like few months or whatever. But I don't know. Maybe I'll grow it out. But the problem is like, what do you in between? It's like you got like half gray and half,
yeah,
it's hard to like dye your hair out and make it gray.
right,
I
right.
don't know. So that's kind of a
I
dilemma, I guess. I don't know. I could just let it go, but
I went pretty much completely white um
yeah,
for a while, and then when I met my current girlfriend,
yeah,
who's my same age as me, mind you. So it's like not like we're I'm hiding anything from her.
yeah, right.
Um, and turns out she doesn't like the gray hair. I love it. Like I would be completely like I don't care. Like I really
That's
don't care.
cool.
Um,
Yeah, it's weird because like 2 or 3 years ago, like I went through kind of I guess it was kind of like a midlife crisis, kind of late. I mean, I'm like, my late 50s, I'm 58. But I started like, it was part of the reason though, is because on Facebook, I was realizing, geez, all these people look so old. And I mean, not everybody, but one of the guys, like, I was like Matt Luke, and you've seen a picture of him, like, he just looks like he's 90 years old,
yeah,
and I, I don't want to look like I'm 20, but it's nice to look like you're 50. If
Right.
you're 60 and if you look like you're 50, that's cool. Okay.
Exactly. Yeah, I
But
agree with
but
that.
being 60 and looking like you're 90 kind of sucks,
Yeah, yeah,
So
and I know several
uh,
people on both sides of that. Like, a couple of people I know who, are
yeah,
older than me. I'm 49, and
yeah,
I know a few people who are, in their early 40s who look, it's amazing, right? I
yeah.
mean, they might as
Right.
well be 110.
I know. It's just weird. I guess it's genetics, or maybe it might be from smoking, drugs.
But
On
I,
some people,
I
it's different things.
maybe, I mean, but I have my share of vices, and I mean, I like to think I don't look 105. Maybe I do. Like,
No,
that's the whole thing. Like,
no,
you don't know. You don't really know.
no.
Like, all you see is
Yeah, I know.
yourself.
Yeah, right, right, exactly. I mean, yeah, I don't think you don't. You don't look like you look. You definitely look younger than me. I think so. I mean, when I first saw you, I was like, "Well, I'm not sure how old you are, but I think you're younger than me."
Yeah.
So, and I'm 58. So,
Um,
you know,
yeah, because like I said, like you guys were really doing. You would actually just gotten your start when I moved out to Seattle, and I was
yeah, yeah,
13, 14, 13. It's all a fucking blur, man. I think I was 13 or
you're right.
14 when I moved out here.
Yeah, that would
Um,
be mid 80s if you're 49. Yeah,
yeah,
something
and
like
and
that. Okay.
I moved from northern Idaho, so I understand the frustration with Ellensburg a lot.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's the same area,
Yeah,
northern Idaho and
yeah.
Owensburg.
It's one
Definitely
of
have a lot in
those.
common.
Yeah, but I grew up in a mining town, which is a little bit different because
Oh
like
yeah, a little different.
ranching and mining, they're similar, but not
What town?
100%.
What town are you from?
Wallace, Idaho.
Wallace. Oh yeah, I know
Yeah,
where
with
that
the
is. That on the
whorehouses.
free? Is that on the? Is that Let's see. Is that the town where the freeway goes through? They had to like. What did they
Yeah,
do? They made it go over. Yeah, I
yeah.
remember
They
I've been
they
through that.
moved the
Yeah.
freeway around it.
Right.
And its big claim to fame was the last stoplight between Seattle and Chicago on I-90.
Wow.
And I
Yeah,
actually
that's
lived in an apartment looking over that stoplight. So that's my big
oh
claim to
god.
fame, right?
That's pretty wild.
Um,
Yes, definitely.
yeah, no, it's totally
So
crazy. But like I was saying on to somebody else a couple of weeks ago, it's um, it's really weird to be from a town like that, and
yeah.
suddenly, well, obviously you and I have very, very, very different paths, right? So, but it's still weird to like be out and about and well, to be outside of those little fucking towns, right? I mean, it's
Yeah, I
weird.
know. Well, because yeah, the thing is like I kind of was like when I moved to New York, we didn't live in the city, but I go to New York City a lot of times, and that's
Hmm.
what it's weird being in the middle of as opposed to being out in the middle of nowhere, which is usually what I spend most of my life in the middle of nowhere, and
Hmm.
like in the middle of everywhere in New York City. Like so you go like to Times Square. It's like
Oh yeah.
that's like, if you said where's the middle of the world, like Times Square could definitely,
Oh, without a
qualify.
doubt,
Yeah.
without a doubt.
Right. So but yeah, and then coming from a little town, I mean, now I'm in the middle of nowhere. But Seattle was
It's the middle of
it
nowhere,
was
man.
starting to be yeah, it was starting to be somewhere, in the 90s, it was definitely being somewhere, but in the 80s, it was definitely not in the middle of anywhere. It was like way out in the boonies,
Yeah,
you
it's
didn't go to Seattle unless you were like working for Boeing or maybe in the Navy or something
right.
like that,
Yeah. I mean, one of my favorite stories to tell people, because, as I travel around and the minute you say you're from Seattle, people are like, oh, well, do you know? I'm like, well,
Yeah. Do you
no.
know? Did you know Kurt Cobain?
Um, Actually, I've got a funny story about that, but we
Yeah,
don't have to talk about it right now.
that's like a,
Um, but people will say, they're baffled by the whole thing. They're like, oh my God, you lived in Seattle. And I was like, yeah, okay.
yeah,
Um,
right,
the first time I lived in Seattle was late 89, like in downtown Seattle,
yeah,
right? Or 90, I forget, whatever,
right.
89 or 90. And I lived on Western, right across
Mhm.
from I can't even think of the name. It was a I'll think of it, Cyclops, right across from Cyclops
Cyclops.
Cafe,
Oh yeah, right,
the original one
right.
down on Western. So,
Yeah.
and there was nothing down there. And the story I'll tell
Oh,
people is I could walk literally from downtown Seattle all the way to my place
Turn
on a
off
Friday night.
the watering the lawn.
And hi,
sorry. Hi, it's my wife. I
That's
left the
hi,
water on. Do
wife.
we need to turn it off?
Yeah, because the guy's trying to deliver this food or whatever we ordered.
Oh shoot. Well, it's just pull it across the lawn the other way.
You know, I'm not editing that out because
Yeah,
that's
I
perfect.
know.
That's
Yeah,
wonderful.
see, well, we just had the massive winter, it was one
Oh,
degree
that's
here, like
right.
for a
Oh
couple
my
of
God,
days,
I
and it's
forgot about
never
that.
like that. And today I decided to water the lawn because it's finally like have plus our city was having before the cold, of course, the pandemic is in the middle of all that too.
Mm-hmm.
And the city like had the water had a bunch of horrible industrial chemicals in it. We didn't have any here, but they didn't know that at first. So they're having all these water problems a week before that. And then they had the winter thing, which is like we never have winter. It snows once in a while, a little bit. But that was like
Right.
crazy. And all the power, our power didn't go up. I don't know why, but they
Oh,
they
you're
turned
lucky.
they like were supposed to do these rolling blackouts, and they turned some people's power off all the whole week basically instead of doing the rolling blackout. I don't know what happened. They're in the
Hmm.
process of trying to figure out what happened, I guess. So
You're lucky.
anyway,
I have
I
friends in.
turned the
Oh, sorry.
Oh, so like, that's what the water's on our front because I finally figured I better water the lawn. And plus, I got this tree like in Texas. I don't know if you know live oak trees. They're like supposedly evergreen trees, but
Uh
in
huh.
the fall they don't drop their leaves. They drop acorns. Starting about March 1st, they drop leaves, and they drop so many leaves. It's insane. There's really hard, yucky leaves, and my entire front yard is like covered with the leaves, and it's like spring.
Mm-hmm.
Supposedly, it's not here. It's like fall instead. And
That's
there's
insane.
like about half of all the trees in Texas are live oaks. Yeah, it sucks. So
Texas
I
is a
decided,
weird place, man. It's a really
yeah, I
weird
mean,
place.
it is. I had been here a little bit before we moved here, but we moved here basically because my wife and her parents lived in Oklahoma, and we were like, well, we could be closer to your parents. We moved to
Ah,
Texas. She got a pretty good job offer here, so and it worked out really good because we've been here for 20 years. So
well, I mean, good for you. Good for you. Just to finish up on that thought, though, I mean, I could literally walk from downtown all the way to my apartment on a Friday night and
yeah,
not see a soul, like literally no one, the
yeah, I
entire
used
way.
to do that down First Avenue. I lived in Lower Queen Anne for a while, like in the early '90s, and I'd go to the Vogue sometimes, and there was nothing down there except for a couple bars and
Yeah,
even First Avenue, like First Avenue between the Queen Anne and downtown. There wasn't hardly anything there
there's
until you got
nothing.
to Pike Place Market.
Yeah, I mean, and going from the other side, so like right, kitty corner from the Vogue, there was the Frontier Room,
Yeah, I
and
went there
you
once
know,
or twice.
I love the Frontier Room. So the Frontier Room was where you would go to get drunk. The Vogue is where you'd go
Yeah,
for your drugs,
yeah,
right? So it was kind of
right.
like back and forth all the time.
Yeah,
Um,
right.
and then yeah, from there was nothing. I mean, literally nothing going
No,
north at all. You
no,
know,
yeah, that was a
south there
walk.
were a
I did a
couple of
lot.
bars. If you walked up to Second, of course, there was the Nightlight,
Yeah,
and Gibson House. Like that was
there
about it,
was. Yeah,
right? I mean, there's
yeah.
nothing. And so,
Yeah, well, there's probably a lot more clubs later on. I mean, there weren't really that many clubs in you got the Central, which didn't really, by the early 90s, it was like somebody else owned it and it wasn't that cool. And then you got the Vogue and the Off Ramp. That was until a little bit later, like for like
mhm,
89, 90, right? I
right,
think something
yeah,
like that.
yeah,
Yeah. And then the early on, I went to Skid Row once, but I was like some of the places that were too early, like what was it, Gorilla Gardens. That
right,
was earlier than or the Metropolis.
yeah, me
I
ditto,
never went to any of those places. Those places were before my time. But
yeah.
yeah, there weren't really, what other clubs? The Central, the
That was a,
Vogue.
that was about it. That was about
Can't
it.
think of much else. Yeah. Oh, yeah. The first time we played in Seattle, we played the Rainbow up in the U District.
So
That
that
wasn't.
used to be a great spot, right? I
Yeah.
mean, a great spot. I mean, granted, you could only fit about 50 people in there comfortably. 150, I think, is was their official capacity, but you
Yeah, it
know,
wasn't very big. Yeah, we played
right,
there. We opened the first show we ever played in Seattle was like probably '87, and it was like we opened for Danger Bunny. I'm not quite sure if
or
that
Action
was like
Buddy.
some. No, it was Danger Bunny, like
Oh,
bunny,
Bunny.
like
Oh, okay, okay,
rabbit. Yeah,
yeah.
Danger Bunny. I don't know. I can't
Wow.
remember much about what the Steve Fisk helped us set the show up over there. So I don't know. It was like definitely And so at that point we're still like, there's a music scene in Seattle. Okay, I guess not. I don't know.
Right.
And we were already, and that was when we did our first US tour, was 1987. So we toured all over the place and then came back to Seattle. And it's like, there's something going on here. There was, we just, at that time too, we gradually started getting records from probably like the Melvins and
Right.
Green River. And, there's a little just right before Sub Pop. And we knew, like, Steve Fisk was friends with Bruce Pavitt, and he brought,
Hmm.
he was interested in us. That's the thing that we had, see, after Clairvoyance. Clairvoyance was like, we put out a record, yay. And then suddenly we went to California, got hooked up somehow with SST a couple different ways. One was that Steve Fisk knew a couple people. One was Ray Farrell, who worked for SST,
Hmm.
and got some people to come to some of the shows, and Greg Ginn really liked Other Worlds. That was like the whole time. That was
I
his
love
big
that.
thing, it did. Yeah. And so he was like, that's why he wanted to sign us. And he called us up on the phone after we came back, like in early 87. We were all working at the Newer Video in Ellensburg. Our family had a video store. And this is
Hmm.
where the whole band worked, and we rehearsed in the back.
I love that.
And we get the phone call from Greg Ginn. And this is like getting a call from like the big rock star,
Right.
because,
Oh yeah.
yeah, to us he was,
Yeah.
and he's telling us he wants to, he would beat around the bush. He wouldn't say, like, you want to be our label finally. And Lannigan was talking to him. We were all sitting there listening. And you want us to like be on your label? He's like, oh yeah, that'd be cool. It's like, okay. So
So
that kind of, yeah, we
I
were in the middle of recording the record. So we just kept going. And,
right.
the second record, that what ended up being Even Out.
So I have to ask this. I mean, I personally like Greg a lot, like,
Yeah.
um, but a lot of people don't. So I've got to ask the question: Did you actually make any? Did you actually get any royalty checks
We
from
have,
SST?
not recently, but we have two or three times I think early on, we actually were amazed to get paid, like in the early 90s, a few thousand, like, those records sold pretty good.
Hmm. Yeah, they did.
We sold like 25,000. This was like back in the 90s. I don't know what they do now. 25,000 of Buzz Factory, and like 10,000 of the other ones before that, and like
Hmm.
50,000 of the anthology one, So
Hmm.
yeah, he paid us a few $1,000s, I remember, and started and sent us statements every once in a while for a few years.
Well, that's good.
Then we didn't hear from him for a while. And then finally, the last time we got paid was probably around 2010. But it kind of sucks because since then, I know he's done everything, put everything out digitally, and he still has
Right.
somehow made vinyl. I don't even know if he used it, like, was just from the like CD, or if he still has a master tape. He actually lives in Texas now, I guess, but I don't have any
Oh, really?
contact with him. Yeah, it's been trying to, like, yeah, we've sort of like thinking we should get a hold of him so he can pay us. I don't know. But our band's had a lot of, in the last 10 years, we like dissolved the business partnership because it was a pain in the butt.
Right.
It's like every year you have to do taxes for the business. It's like we're not making any money as a band. We
Right.
do make some money royalties, like publishing stuff.
Right.
But yeah, so finally, about 2012 or so, we're just like, we'll dissolve the partnership so we don't have to worry about it anymore, which is really nice, because then every year you don't have to worry about the taxes. Because we got in some
Yeah.
really nasty tax crap.
I'm sure.
This is a nice story. I don't know if you ever heard the story about the IRS and the grunge thing, and they like this. There was some guy. I didn't really know exactly the story Van was telling me. Apparently,
Okay.
some IRS guy in the late 90s who decided, like, I'm going to go after some of these lesser grunge bands. I bet they like haven't paid taxes. And they were right. We
Oh
had a
man.
situation where we had this bad management for years, and nobody ever did our taxes for like 7 years or something.
Hmm.
And apparently Mudhoney had some problems too. And so this tax guy decided he was going to go after
Oh my
everybody.
God.
And yeah, so he was like, trying to like get everyone in trouble. And I ended up like doing offer and compromise. But supposedly I owed, like, it was, they said, like, when we finally did my taxes for all those years, they said like I made something like, $90,000 in taxes, and I didn't even make anywhere near enough
Oh
to
my
owe
God.
$90,000 in taxes. But because of, I don't know why, like, it showed one year I made $50,000. I never made anything remotely $50,000 in 1 year. But it's like all this
Oh,
crap going on, and money going this way,
right.
that way, and I didn't, we didn't have any idea what was going on. Ever since 2000, I make sure I pay my taxes on time every
Yeah.
single
Yeah.
year.
I mean,
But that was always a pain to have to wait for that Screaming Trees stuff. It's like I don't want to deal with that, and
Right.
finally don't have to.
I mean, well, you get to the point where you're like, I don't even want the check to come in the mail because then I have to
Yeah,
worry about
right.
it. Right.
Yeah, right.
Like, I don't care how
Exactly.
much it is, just I don't want to deal with it because,
Yeah.
especially as because technically you guys would be like, well, depending on how your LLC was set up, right? And
Yeah.
now of course you don't even have that right now.
No. Yeah. So
So
if we did get a check from the Screaming Trees, it'd be like, what are we? Are we gonna cash the check? I don't know, because
probably
the money everybody gets is like all personal.
right, right. But
We'd have to figure out some way to
that
do it.
money that comes in, even if it is just personal,
Yeah.
is going to be taxed as
Well, I
potentially at
know.
least twice, right?
Yeah. Well, you got to
So
remember to pay taxes on it or take the tax money out, which you never do. It's
no,
like, yeah,
of course
take a
not.
third of the money out. It's like, no, you're not going to do that. Are you crazy?
No,
Yeah. Right.
no. I mean,
So,
if you get a check for say like 5 grand,
yeah.
then what are you going to do? You're going to say, hey, I've got 5 grand in my account,
Yeah, I know. You're not going to
right?
like say, I need to save $1,500 of that to pay the IRS. No,
Yeah,
I'm not going to
no,
do that.
fuck
We're going
that.
to worry about that later.
Yeah, if the number shows up
Yeah.
as five, you're gonna be like, okay, that's mine.
Yeah.
That's
I
mine.
don't know. Yeah, I wish Van could tell the story because he knows a lot more about it. But anyway, it was like an IRS guy decided to like make his name on going after the
It's horrible.
bands that, he knew that were just like lame enough to not keep track of the money, but not big enough to make very much money. you
Did
know?
you end up paying your 90,000 or did you do an
Yeah.
upper
Well,
number
no,
actually?
I only had to like pay something a few $1,000s,
Oh,
and
good, good
then
for you.
that was, and then you have to like pay your taxes every year on time. But yeah, ever since I, I, I've always, one thing I learned about being in the band, maybe it's just like a life lesson, but if don't let other people do stuff. If you want something done, you just got to go straight to it and do it
Yeah,
yourself. Because whatever, like, like, oh, I'll do this, I'll do that, money wise, or even like, um, it just doesn't matter. You got to do it yourself if you want to make sure something gets done.
yeah.
Definitely with the taxes, that was the thing. I can't believe now because I'm really, want to make sure my taxes are done on time every year, and I do.
Mm-hmm.
But back then, I just didn't even think about the taxes for seven
Right.
years
Well,
or
yeah,
something.
no, I
It's
mean,
hard to believe.
I've
Hard to
been
believe, but I didn't.
independent for 25 years and I still have an
Yeah,
issue with that. In fact, I think I owe the
I
IRS
know.
175,000 right now,
I know. Oh yeah, that's not.
which is
Oh god, that's
ridiculous.
one. That sucks.
Um,
Yeah, I did a thing a few years ago where I had like a bunch of debt uh, that was like forgiven, and I had to, you had to pay taxes on that. It sucks. I had to do
right.
one of those
Yeah, exactly, right?
payment plans for a couple of years, but that worked out okay. But
Yeah,
yeah, IRS stuff sucks.
yeah, it totally sucks. And in fact, I totally don't want to talk about that. Um,
Yeah.
because the one thing the IRS can do, and this is about a decade old now, um, the IRS actually can look at your emails. They can look at whatever.
Oh yeah, that's true. They can.
It's terrifying.
I know. It's
So
scary.
they're like a little arm that just comes out and be like, okay, we're just going to take your
Yeah, well,
money.
that's what that guy from the Seattle tax guy would have done. Like nowadays, he would have been checking out all the
Oh
like
yeah,
social media stuff of all the bands. See, let's see if they're talking about like selling records at their shows because that they never like
right.
kept track of that to pay taxes on,
Yeah,
right?
I personally can't think of a single band I know who actually was like, oh yeah, we made $1,000 selling albums this week at shows.
Yeah, right.
Fuck
Yeah,
no. Who's gonna do that?
no, yeah. I try to keep track of my stuff at least, so I'm not at least so I tell them how much I make and I'm not lying about it. I
Right.
could.
I do the same thing, but the flip side to that is I don't because I kind of do it ad hoc. I don't take out the money I should take out.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
So
I've
it's
never
like,
have either. Yeah, well, I had the same thing. I've been self-employed. I think I had a couple jobs like when in the early 80s, but I've been self-employed my whole life. So it's like I remember finding out that what Social Security self-employment tax? What's that? I don't know.
and why is it 6.5% or seven, whatever it is? Seven, I think it's 7.5 now. Um,
Yeah.
oh, actually, it's 15 because technically the employer is supposed to
Right.
pay
You
half
only
of
have
it.
to right. So that's why, but you're the employer, so why don't you have to pay half? But I never understood that one.
Yeah, no, no. Well,
I'm
it's a money
employed,
grab.
self-employed. Yeah,
Totally a
that's
money
fine.
grab. You know, Gary, this is a great. I almost called you Van for fuck's sake. Sorry.
That's okay.
Um,
We've been
there's
confused many times. One
well,
time, somebody in Ellensburg it was Circle K, like 7-Eleven type place. Like Van
Hmm.
went in there. We were like, I wasn't even together with him that day. Like he was like living somewhere else. Like he goes in, and then I go back. Then I went in there a few minutes later, and they're like, "Back for more snacks, huh?" And we had different hair. We didn't even really, but they still thought we were the same person. So
You know,
it's not.
one of my favorite Screaming Trees stories is I think I saw you. To be honest, I have no idea. 3, 5, 10, 100. Like I really don't know how many times, but at least a
Yeah,
couple of
a
times.
lot of times. Yeah.
Um, the only show I actually remember,
Mm.
through age and whatnot, is I think it was you guys, Tad and Soundgarden at the. I want to say it was
Oh,
the More.
yeah, the more. Yeah,
Yeah,
that was a good show.
and it
That's
was
the
like,
picture on the cover of Changes Come is in that show.
oh, is okay, perfect,
Yeah.
perfect. And the memory that I took away, I think I was probably fucked up on something. Anyway,
Mhm.
um, and I think I started to peak on whatever I was on right about the time you guys came on stage because I think Tad opened and you guys were right below Soundgarden,
Right. Yeah. Right.
and I was just like coming up on whatever the fuck I was on. And just remember you and Van literally like rolling on stage.
Yeah.
Like you guys were rolling around, but you're still playing. You're
Yeah, I know.
you're
Yeah, we
rolling
still
around.
try to do that.
It was fucking
Yeah, that
hysterical.
happened one time. I remember playing, and one of the first times I started doing that, we were playing in Bellingham, and there was like I kind of like tripped backwards and I kind of rolled over like that. I was like, hey, that was kind of, I didn't get hurt. And I was like, that was kind of cool. Then I remember seeing some video of Hendrix doing something like that, where he's just standing there. All of a sudden, he like, boom, like, so I thought, okay, I'll do that. And then sort of, the thing is weird with all that, like going crazy on stage and stuff, because on the one hand, it's like, was all really genuine, but once in a while, especially later on, it's kind of like, you have to do that, you
Right.
know?
No, exactly. Exactly.
And it was kind of cool way later, like when we got Josh home in the band, like where I actually could play on stage. And so I still, tried to go nuts some, but actually playing and not just completely being was kind of different too, I guess. So, but I don't know. But I mean, it was, if it's not genuine, it looks like really, really
Right. Right. And I think that that's something this is a
bad.
great segue. I'm so glad we talked about
Yeah.
this. There's a even the dumbest of the public, of which most of them are, like let's
Yeah.
face it,
Yeah.
and I'm
I know.
probably including myself in that too,
Yeah.
right? Um they even the dumbest of the dumb
Yeah.
understand not being authentic, right?
Yeah.
At some
That's
level.
what did you see that thing a few weeks ago? I hadn't heard of the lady. What's her name? I can't remember. It was on Saturday Night Live, and she smashed the guitar. Did you see that? What
I
is that
didn't
lady's
know.
name?
I didn't see that.
Yeah, you'll have to look that up. It was a few weeks ago, and I can't remember. She wasn't real much of a rock kind of thing. Her stuff was kind of mellow, a little bit rock.
Hmm.
It was yeah, but anyway, at the end of the second song, she starts. They kind of go into this. All of a sudden, they think they're maybe slightly 1% Sonic Youth or something. It's like
Right.
doing a loud
I love it.
kind of thing, and she goes, to break the guitar, and it was like I've only broken the guitar on purpose once, and it was because we were having this crazy time at Roskilde Festival, and I hated the guitar, and everything went insane, and we decided to smash everything up just at the spur of the moment. And
I love it.
if they're not easy to break, man, this was like a Gibson, it was a blue and neck. But anyway, this lady tries to break the guitar on a monitor, and it was so obvious it was all set up.
Right.
And then it turns out later she even had called Dane Electro to find out if it was okay to smash the guitar because it was a Dane Electro guitar.
Oh my God.
I know, and
That's
like,
ridiculous.
and people were criticizing her really bad for it, but I mean, it came down to the fact that it was so planned and ungenuine. I mean,
Yeah.
do you think that? I don't know. Did Pete Townsend plan on breaking guitars all the time? Did Kurt plan on breaking guitars all the time? At
Maybe.
some point, they may have, but originally when they started doing it, they didn't. I mean,
Right.
it's and just I don't know. I mean, there was a real lot of controversy about this because people were criticizing her because she was a woman breaking the guitar, and that wasn't what I thought
Oh.
at all. It was just that it was so genuine, you know. It's like, and the music didn't really have any kind of impetus to smash a guitar. It's kind of like Donovan's
Right.
like, yeah, Atlantis, yeah, you know, or
Well,
something.
it's like what I was talking to Brad Sensel about, right? And that is it's the same culture that has T-shirts where like a Hollywood actress who is like
Oh,
22
yeah,
is
wearing the
wearing a
Ramones
fucking or a
or
Bathory
see,
T-shirt, right? Like Bathory, like they
yeah,
have no trust me, they have no idea who Bathory is. They
yeah,
happen to be one of my favorite bands, but
right. I don't
um,
even know. So I got, do I
it's
know who Bathory is? Who is
super
it?
super early death metal, like from
Okay,
like 90 80 82 from Switzerland, like
really? Okay.
totally just like a weird.
But yeah, I mean, you see plenty of people who are wearing like the CBGBs or Ramon shirts who have no idea who the hell Ramones were,
No,
or where
at
CBGBs
all.
was. But that's even more. That's really obscure. But you'd like they get the most obscure thing, and then like
Yeah.
say, "Look how cool I am," because this is really obscure, even though I don't know how, have any idea who it is. It's just I
Right.
know it's obscure. Or people wear Che Guevara shirts. That's like a big thing
No,
2 years ago.
hey, we could probably talk about that for about an hour.
Yeah, I know.
I want to I want to respect your time, but two,
Yeah. No, that's
um,
interesting. It's kind of cool to talk about that just a bit though, because really the whole Seattle music, a lot of this, at least Seattle music scene, the side with Nirvana and Mudhoney and Tad and us and Love Battery, was about being genuine.
mhm,
It was like that was kind of the thing. Like Pearl Jam didn't quite fit, and even some of
no.
the guys like Stone and Jeff, because they kind of seemed like they wanted to get. They should have moved to LA and started,
Well,
instead of do it in Seattle, that kind of thing.
I think they were in the process of doing that when Andy died. Like I think
Oh
that
yeah,
was
that's
their
not
whole thing.
surprising. I always thought Alice in Chains was in that bunch, but it turned out that they weren't. Alice in Chains actually, I think, ended up being one of the best bands from
Well, yeah.
Seattle. Even though at the time I didn't really get it because they come from that kind of hair metal thing. But that was a weird hair metal scene,
Oh
like in
yeah.
North Seattle, like white trash sort of people
So
and
I used to
stuff.
I grew up in Edmonds and actually I live here now.
Yeah,
Um, and I used to when I was a teenager, I was like 16, 17. Well, again,
yeah,
it's a blur, but somewhere in there. I was underage, let's put it that way.
right,
And there was a steakhouse, the Riviera Steakhouse in Linwood. And I used to
yeah,
go there and they would have Alice in Chains, right? Like
yeah.
not Alice in
Chains, right,
Chains, yeah.
right.
The Bondage Boys, Take Me Down.
Yeah.
Like I mean, all of the people who want to do like hair metal and whatnot. And they would play in there.
Right.
Slaughterhouse Five, which actually I loved that
Oh,
band.
yeah.
Um, and the owner was really cool. Like he was an old Chinese guy, and he'd be like, "You can't come in the bar, but you can stand right here." So I would like
That's
stand
cool.
at the end of the hallway.
That's
I'd order a
fun.
Coke or whatever, and just sit there and like watch these bands
Yeah, well,
play.
especially in Seattle was or Washington State was really hard ass about
Oh,
21.
super fucking hard ass.
Yeah, in fact, the first time you couldn't go into the club if you were playing there. We had the first time we played at Central, like Pickerel and Van were both under 21, and they had to stay
Oh,
outside. Yeah,
yeah.
so I stayed outside too, which is why I didn't see Room 9. We played with Room 9 there. I
Oh,
always felt bad I didn't see Room 9 because I stayed outside. So
did did
because of
did
Van and
did they
Pickerel
make you
too.
crawl through the alley space, or did you get to come through the front?
No, we had to go through the alley.
The alley.
Remember? Yeah, yeah, the alley.
The funniest thing is the Central has been, or used to be anyway, my home bar, right? Because I lived
Yeah,
right around the corner. And so, show or not, I was, usually there.
yeah,
And
right.
one day, it's like 11:30 in the morning,
Mhm.
and I was in there and getting lunch, in
Right.
quotes.
Yeah, right.
And all of a sudden, I hear the bartender say, "Holy fuck, did you see that?" And I like look back,
Yeah.
and somebody from the night before had forgotten to shut the window to the
Oh,
outside. So there were these guys like just crawling through the alley, like trying to get into Central at like 11:30 in the morning.
oh man.
And yeah, we had to take a broom and go, shake them down.
Yeah, Central
Like
was not a very comfortable place to
no,
go or play. But I don't know if people know that Susan Silver's office was right upstairs.
I
So
do
like
know. I know
later
that.
on, when she was our manager, we could like, oh, I remember taking a nap before the show on her couch or
Yeah.
something. So That
Yeah,
was kind of
that
convenient.
whole area up there is
Yeah,
beautiful. Like, I mean, if I had the money, I would buy that building in a heartbeat,
yeah.
and convert
I
it.
think isn't the Central still there, but I don't know what kind of thing it
The Central
is.
hasn't been open for almost a year now. So,
Oh, really? Well,
yeah.
yeah, because of the pandemic,
Yeah.
obviously. But yeah,
But
before the pandemic, it was still there.
what's funny is I want to touch on this, and then I have like another. Do you have another 10 minutes?
Yeah, 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 sure.
Okay, perfect. Um, the same owner has had Central since 1977, I
Really?
think.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah, and he just kind of like changes as as time goes on. He's like, okay, well, let's do this. Oh, wait, let's do that, right? Um,
Yeah. Yeah,
and
because it seemed like so the same person owned it like in the 90s, and it just seemed like it changed. I don't know why. It just maybe it was just I don't
different
know.
bookers, right? I mean, that's really what it was all about. Um,
Yeah.
and you know, the current booker is a good friend of mine, and he's
Yeah.
done, I think, a pretty good job. Or I'm
Right.
sorry, he did up until a year ago, right?
Yeah.
Of bringing bands in there.
Right. I
Um,
forget about that.
I brought in uh, Dave Dichter, like Millions of Dead Cops, right? So I brought him in as an acoustic band at Central. It was a fucking blast. There were like 15 people there,
That sounds interesting.
right?
Yeah,
Because
it's good
first
old
of all,
shows like that.
nobody remembers Millions of Dead Cops. Number
No,
one.
I remember them.
Well, I do. I fucking love them,
Yeah.
but it was the acoustic set, right?
Yeah.
So it was like, okay, Millions of Dead Cops acoustic.
Yeah, that sounds interesting.
Oh, it
Yeah.
was so much fun. It was. I mean, well, he's from Texas, so he's got that kind
Yeah.
of like sensibility going on, right? So it
Yeah.
was like Texas punk rock going on, but acoustic.
Yeah.
it
Right.
was
There
it
you
was a
go.
lot of fun. A lot of fun.
That sounds interesting.
Yeah, no.
Well, yeah. I don't know. I mean, I never, I see that up till about 95, I spent some time in Seattle. But after that, I was this here back a few times. I remember going to the Crocodile quite a bit in the late 90s. That was like a
Right.
pretty cool place to go. But yeah, I know like this from like Facebook and seeing like stuff that's going on. There's been a whole lot of other venues that I have no idea where they are,
Yeah.
that were like pretty popular. And it's like, that's, hey, that was a really cool venue, like, but that
Yeah.
have come and gone.
Yeah.
And of course, mostly gone nowadays.
Well, they're all gone.
Yeah.
And speaking of being all gone, this is a good segue here. So,
Yeah.
um, you just recently had, and I promise to God, this is not an ambush, Gary. I'm just gonna say it.
Yeah.
Um, recently, your bandmate, Mr. Lanigan,
Oh yeah,
posted
that's
an
fun.
autobiography. I know, and again, I know you've talked about this, ad nauseum, so I'm not gonna, like
Yeah, that's cool. I mean, I'm not
whatever.
upset about it. I mean,
Um,
it was scary at first, but kind of got used to it. And then
well, so
actually, go ahead.
one thing that I was gonna say is like, when you did that initial Facebook post, right, and you did it
Yeah.
on your own, your personal little page,
Yeah.
and
Right.
I mean, you were hurt, right? I mean,
Well,
you were
yeah.
seriously fucking hurt.
I mean, yeah. The main reason I was hurt was because he's calling. I mean, I really love all those old songs, and I mean,
Hmm.
most of them. I mean, I was, I wrote the main songwriter, and there's a few things, I could go song by song, like I wrote this, but mainly
Hmm.
they were mostly my songs, especially the SST years. And he's calling them complete shit. That was what really hurt my
Sure.
feelings, because we didn't get along very well. At first the band got together and we were kind of friends, but then everyone's got their own quirks, and I'm like, I've never been diagnosed with autism, but I got a lot of autistic sort of characteristics. I know I talk to like people I know think, yeah, you probably could have got diagnosed with autism probably. But back in the 70s, like kids like were just, it's kind of like recluse or
Hmm.
something, they didn't diagnose very many people with autism back then. But yeah, so yeah, I was really, I'd only seen like, I never did read the whole book, and I've heard like passages out and get that gist of what it's
Hmm.
about and stuff. But I was there was somebody had posted like a couple of pages an advanced copy of it, so it was right a little before it came out, and I was just kind of like, what are you digging this up for 20 or 30 years later?
Right.
you know I've moved so far past that. I used to, like, the first 10 years after the band, I used to have nightmares all the time about, like stuff that was
I
going on
get
with the
that.
band and stuff. And it took me about that long. And that's why I really didn't do much of my solo career, for some other reasons too, just because there wasn't really an outlet to do it. The internet was a little different in the 2000s as opposed to the 2010s.
Right.
But yeah, I wasn't really, kind of trying to get away from all that hell that, being a dysfunctional family, which is basically what the band was like. I'm not going to dispute any of that we, did not get along, but, the overriding thing in me was we were trying to do something artistically. And I'm really proud of it. And like, suddenly there's somebody writing not just like saying it like on a post, but writing an entire book about
Right.
it was all garbage. It was just the
With
worst crap. But yeah. And, and Mark, that was where he, his solo career would have never happened with, he would have still been living in Ellensburg working at Twin City Foods, or, so would I have too, but, we
that's
all, everybody helped each other. It was like, it wouldn't have happened without anybody. One person
right.
hadn't been in the band, and
There's
it wouldn't have turned out that way.
there's definitely some what I like to call, well, lots of people like to call lead singer syndrome. That happened there.
Yeah. Yeah. I never really saw him having that, because we always like, we're real like group. It wasn't like, and some people, especially when we got Epic, are like, we'll take the singer and put him out front type of thing in there. But it was never, especially because it was our relationship songwriting wise. Van wrote some stuff here and there, but it was mainly me writing songs and giving them to Mark. And he was like,
Mm-hmm.
Basically he was like music director and editor.
Right.
He would decide what songs to do. He would like decide, and really good editors change big parts of books and stuff. He did
Mm-hmm.
that. He changed titles of songs, lyrics and stuff like that. And and I think like back in the late 80s, I was a little like, I don't want you to do that. I want to do it the way I want to do it or whatever. But
Mm-hmm.
by the early 90s or mid 90s, I was definitely like, you made all that stuff way better, because it would have just been, confined
Sure.
to some sort of, and I
I,
didn't come out. I mean, and plus the fact that I think Mark's got one of the best voices in rock music.
it's
I
beautiful.
love
It's
his
gorgeous.
voice. I've always have, and I've always been, like honored to have him sing that stuff. Plus, we taught each other how to do everything. We were doing it all at the same time. So, and it just like really was, just seemed like, why does he have to be so nasty about all this stuff?
Yeah,
Especially,
I agree.
like I said, the personal stuff was like, whatever, except for the fact that it's been so long. Why bring it all up now? It's
Right.
kind of like, and
I,
it was just the fact that he's calling all the music complete shit. That's like, I don't like that
I,
idea,
I think, and this is probably going to get me in trouble, but I'm going to say it anyway.
as a,
I think it's very similar to like when like right before we started, I was talking about having Tom Hansen on, and his
yeah,
American Junkie thing.
yeah,
And he took a lot of shit for
yeah,
mentioning, well, Lanigan amongst many others, right, as people
right.
that he was selling dope to.
Yeah, I can't imagine what Mark was thought when he did, if he ever read that, what he, I
No,
don't know. I wouldn't want to be Tom Hansen and Mark, with Mark Lanigan in the same room.
no,
I'm like,
I know for a fact that he has read it, and
yeah,
because Tom was very careful about what he did,
yeah,
right, and way
yeah,
more careful than he probably should have been. Like I
right,
personally would have been like, yeah, whatever.
yeah, right,
Um, and that's why I can't wait to have Tom on so we can actually
yeah,
talk about that
right.
stuff. But
Interesting.
um, it's amazing how that transformation happens, and I trust me, we're going to get out of this really soon, so we can
That's
wrap
okay.
this up. But I think that transformation from, hey, we're a little band in Ellensburg, to, hey, we're signed to SST, we're touring,
Yeah,
and suddenly we're like in for lack of a better term, the Seattle Pantheon, right? And
yeah.
that happened in a very, very, very short amount of time, right?
Well,
Like
yeah,
a few
because it
years.
was like, in 1991, that's when it happened,
Yeah.
into 92. And because, we're an Epic and stuff, but still, we're just like, doing the same thing. Everything was the same. And suddenly, like, I went to the Nirvana show at the Paramount in Halloween in '91,
Hmm.
and it was just like a regular show, but it was bigger. You know, everyone was out in the lobby talking to each other, including all the Nirvana guys, and they were telling us, man, we sold 300,000 copies of the record. It's like, we're like, holy crap. And then like, that was like the last day of the old Seattle scene to me. Cause after that, everything just got kind of bizarre,
Yep.
surreal thing that still completely baffles me. It's like, you know, I think it's, you know, nowadays it's like, that was amazing. It's like what we did was part of rock history. Like I would have seen, like the stuff we did was like the way I saw like the London or San Francisco scenes or something, you know,
Right.
when I was a kid or now, you know, it's like, geez, people think about people that were just like, you know, casual acquaintances or friends of mine, like some kind of like rock gods or something. It's like, Jesus, that's really freaky. But you know,
Yeah.
it's good. It's nice to be able to artistically capitalize on all of it though. It's just like, because I don't, you
Well,
know,
yeah.
my solo stuff, I don't sell very much. The only reason I do it is because I love to make music and I want to make
Right.
stuff that I like, you know, but at least, you know, and it's nice to have people listen to it though. You know, it makes it sort of worth it all.
Well, of course, of
So
course.
yeah,
Um,
so capitalizing on the whole, you know, uh, music pantheon, like you said, it's a good thing. You know, I don't, it's not like I'm, you know, deciding to like,
so
you know, go
Gary,
ahead. I don't know. I lost my train of thought. I'm
no,
sorry.
it's all good. It's all good. Like we're wrapping up here very soon.
Yeah. Okay.
I have a couple of just like free form questions, but one of
Yeah.
the things that you said, you know, you mentioned the word pantheon,
Yeah.
and right before I got on with you, I was talking to an old friend of mine,
Mm-hmm.
and he came up with a question, and I'm gonna butcher it to fuck, but anyway,
Okay.
his question basically um, was, what's it like to have recognition but not be part of the pantheon?
That's way cooler, probably. I mean, I can't even imagine. It'd be horrible to be. I mean, I don't. You know, I was only, I'd say like Kurt Cobain was a casual acquaintance, and I kind of touched. He felt like he touched me just because I loved his music so much, you know, and
Hmm.
I could, you know, relate to like the way I love my music, you know, and you know, I've heard like rumors, and I don't know what really went on. Like Mark was way better, you know, he was good friends with him, but
Hmm.
that, you know, part of the reason, at least, that he decided to end it was because he kind of lost
The
that
passion.
sort of passion, and yeah, he didn't have that. It wasn't his anymore. It's got taken away from him. His music got taken away from him. I can't even
Hmm.
imagine that happening. It's just like, you know, I mean, I mean, I had a hard time probably after the band ended, because like that was my, you know, I never had another band or have solo albums. I had one solo album, but you know, I always wrote for the Screaming Trees. It was like when I
Hmm.
wrote something, it was like, this is gonna be a Screaming Trees song, you know. So
Right.
I didn't think of it another way. So it was hard for me. It took me about 10 years to really move past that. But
Yeah.
yeah, so I think like not being, yeah, being, that's like the perfect place to be, is to be recognized for what you do. People love it, people like it,
Right.
but not be massively famous, because that would just like screw everything up. I mean, because really, you know, it's like you look at what, you know, the Seattle scene, it was really cool before Nevermind came out, and Nevermind's a
Hmm.
great record, and they were
Yeah.
playing the songs. If people were loving them at the shows before Nevermind came out, and it was like, that's part of it. But then suddenly it got taken away, and it's like,
Right.
but on the other hand, of course, I've always been like, you know, it would have been like if the Seattle scene was like if in the early '70s the Stooges and the MC5 were the biggest bands in the world. You know that
Definitely.
if anybody thinks they were, they're completely wrong. They're like,
Yeah.
they were hated, you know, especially the Stooges. I mean, they were just
Right.
like, who are these weird freaks? It wasn't until in the '80s that people started realizing, hey, there was really something there. But in Seattle, it was kind of like, you know, with Nirvana and somewhat with Pearl Jam. I just musically, you know, I respect Pearl Jam. It's never really quite been into them as much as Nirvana.
Yeah.
That Nirvana was
Ditto.
like one of my favorite bands, you know, and they still are. But
Ditto.
um, yeah, it's like they're on that level, you know. They integrity, they fucking were rock, you know. That was what rock was about, and
Yep.
suddenly they were like the Beatles, you know, maybe not that big, but you know, as big as you can get without being the
I don't
Beatles
know.
at
I
the
mean,
time. At the time, you know,
to
I
my
mean,
kids' generation,
he's a
they kind of are though,
yeah,
right?
you're
So,
right.
and my kid
You're
is
right. They are, because the Beatles
19.
are like something that's really, really old, whereas like Kurt Cobain is like still a cultural icon.
Yeah.
People who are younger. So,
Yeah.
whereas like, you know, something like Brian Jones or Jim Morrison, Jimi Hendrix, they're kind of like,
That's right.
who are those really old people? you know. Although it's amazing how some new bands are really into a lot of, rock music. Not,
Right.
the whole stretch of from the early 60s to now.
Oh
So,
my God, you need to get your dog like right up in the picture here because
oh yeah,
so
Rubble, come on.
cute.
There he
Oh my
is.
God, so
Say the
cute.
hello, Rubble.
Oh,
Yes, he's very cute. He's
hey
really,
Gary, I know you got to go.
yeah.
I got to go too. But
Yeah, I got to
let's
get
do
the water off.
one.
That's the problem.
Apparently, yeah, your wife
I
is
don't know.
going to come back in and she's going to
It's
be pissed.
flooding the lawn or something. I don't know. I've had it on all day, but I was moving it around. But
So right before we go, I have one last question, and this
yeah,
is the question nobody fucking likes to answer.
okay,
I've been doing it for like 35 years in
right.
different ways, but the question is, what is one thing about you nobody would know? Like, what is
Nobody would
some
know.
weird thing that
Oh, yeah, sure. Yeah, I always have trouble thinking of something. Think of something that nobody knows.
or I'm sorry, that would be
But
surprising to them. It doesn't have to be
yeah,
something nobody knows.
yeah, right. I think. Well, I mean, I do all sorts of stuff. What? I don't know. Is it surprising? Trying to think. What about? Yeah, I mean, probably people don't know anything except for my music. I mean, I really like. I only watch science fiction movies and I only read science fiction books.
That works.
Is that? I mean, yeah. I mean,
That's
this is like
good.
I don't really like anything that's not sci-fi. I don't know. It's a lot of music that I do, especially like Philip K. Dick's like my favorite author, probably,
Oh
and
fuck
Arthur
yeah.
C. Clarke. So I like hard sci-fi and like the weird psychological sci-fi too. It's kind of like, but yeah, I don't know. I mean, you might be able to hear that in some of the songs, I guess. But yeah, that's like my thing. I kind of run out of stuff nowadays, though. I don't listen to, I don't like read too much new stuff. Or
Hmm.
most of the new TV shows suck. I don't know. Every once in a while,
They
there's
do.
some kind of
They do. Every once in a while, like Netflix will do a Netflix original,
yeah,
and you'll watch it and be like, okay, that was okay, but they only do like one or two seasons at a time, so it's like, well,
yeah.
fuck you. Like
Well, they
I want
ruined.
like six,
Yeah, like
seven,
the Man in the High Castle sucked. That was just like I was looking forward to that, like Philip K. Dick, thing, and
right?
they turned it into like, oh, there's a resistance to the Nazis and stuff. That wasn't good. And then I watched Arthur C. Clarke, The Childhood's End. They had a thing on. I was on Sci-Fi a few years ago, and it was so bad I wanted to kill somebody the whole time. I had to watch the whole thing because it was like that was one of my favorite old books, but man, it was like painful. It was really bad.
Hey, Gary, I
Okay.
appreciate you being on so much. I have a lot of
Oh,
more
yeah, no
questions,
problem.
so
I
hey,
know.
let's do a round two at some point, okay?
Yeah, I know this. Your whole life is like a whole bunch of huge amount of stuff to talk
It
about.
is, it
So
is,
I know.
and I also know, trust me, you don't piss off your wife, so go fix
Yeah,
your
right.
fucking hose problem or
Yeah.
whatever's going on there, and give
Well,
your
we had
dog
a
a.
Walmart order, and the Walmart guy didn't want to walk through the water.
Oh.
Delivery guy
So
didn't want to walk through
make
the water.
make sure you take care of that and give your dog a fucking
Yeah.
treat, man.
Yeah,
Look
yeah. It's time
like
for them to
like
eat.
there was
Yeah,
a.
the other dog, Maxie's down
Oh,
there. You can't see
hi.
him very
Yeah, no,
much. Yeah, you see
he's
Maxie.
cute.
Maxie's there, and
Yeah. Oh,
Bungles.
they're both wagging their tails. So they probably heard treat.
Yeah, yeah.
They're all good. Gary,
Okay.
I appreciate it so much,
All
man.
right.
Hey, if you don't mind, can you stay on for like 2 minutes after we hang up?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Sure.
Cheers, man. Thank you.
Okay.